Ta-da! Congratulations, ladies and gentlemen. You've made it to the 5th and final unit of your theory course for this year. We're going to cover a few little topics in this unit. The first of which is the scale and, of course, the major scale. Now, we've been playing scales in class, of course. A scale is officially any pattern of notes that ascends or descends step by step in whatever pattern of steps to the same note an octave higher. As long as you travel exactly one octave, you have traveled the distance you have made a scale. All right. Every type of scale, major, minor, different kinds of minor scales. There are many kinds of scales, has a pattern of whole and half steps, which is always the same. So, for example, every major scale will sound exactly the same. Every minor scale, natural minor scale, or harmonic minor scale, will always sound exactly the same to every other scale of the same type. All right? We're going to talk about the major scale first. The major scale is probably the most recognizable, and it has a pattern of whole and half steps like this. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. WWH, WWWH. To me, the easy way to remember this is that it sounds like a phone number when you say it. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Right? Blah, 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 blah. Okay? Now, we'll get to what it means in just a second. But essentially, the major scale, to hear it, sounds like this. It is a very recognizable sequence of pitches. All right? If you remember, if you've ever seen The Sound of Music, do a deer, re a drop of golden sun, mi a name. There's literally singing up the scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Okay, you can hear that octave as we approach it. All right, these W's and H's, what is going on with them? You know the W and H here means whole and half steps. And notice how the W's and H's literally fall in between any pair of notes. It's because these don't represent notes themselves, they are the distances between notes. Remember whole steps and half steps like on a keyboard? They're the distances between notes. That's why they fall in between. Okay, you have 8 notes in your major scale. You have 7 intervals or 7 distances. All right, so I'm just going to really quickly pull up a keyboard so you can see what I'm talking about when we discuss these whole and half steps. All right, so let's begin. We've got this keyboard and we have the scale right above us. Okay, WWH, WWWH. Right now, I'm going to use my circle marker here to show how we're moving from the note C. Notice how it says we need to travel a whole step to the next note. Well, on a keyboard, you can see the whole step takes us to D. Another whole step takes us to E. Now we need to travel a half step. So a half step on the keyboard, as you know from previous lessons, E to F is a half step. Now we need a whole, whole, whole half. So to do a whole, whole, whole half, we go whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. You'll notice on a C major scale, when we started on the note C, a major scale on C, we only needed to use the white keys. We didn't need to make any use of the black keys. This is the only time where we're not going to need any black keys to make our major scale. All right? If we start the major scale on any other note, black key or white key, we're going to need to use at least one black key. And here's an example right here. All right, have a look at this scale. We're starting a major scale on the note G. Notice the pattern is the same. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And in order to maintain this pattern, we needed to introduce the F sharp note. Okay, notice, and we'll make the connections right here. Okay, here's the note G, here's the note G. Travel a whole step to A. You can see on the keyboard, a whole step is G to A natural. A to B is a whole step. We need a half step above B, which takes us to C, so C natural. We're still using just the white keys. From C, we need a whole step up, takes us to D natural. We need another whole step, takes us to E natural. Now, look at the keyboard here. We're at the note E, and we have to travel a whole step. Right? A whole step above the note E, look at the keyboard now, is not F. A whole step is F sharp, right? Because there's no black key here. E to F sharp is the whole step. That's why we have to take this note and put an accidental on it, put the sharp sign on it. The bonus is that by making this an F sharp, we've now created the half step here to the note G. F sharp to G is a half step. So we know it works because we've made every interval correct. So take a minute to absorb all that. And if you need to rewatch it just to make sure you understand the connection between our whole and half steps and the connection to the keyboard, please review that and just make sure you have that in your head, you know what's going on. I'm just going to slide this keyboard to the side just in case we need it later on this page. Now, if that's a little bit funny to remember, the whole, half, whole, half, all right, it's technically 7 things to remember, but remember that it sounds like a phone number. If you'd rather, there's another way to memorize the pattern of whole and half steps. It is that the half steps only occur between the 3rd and 4th and 7th and 8th degrees of the scale. Have a look at this scale right here. Note 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's notes 3 and 4. That's where your half step is. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, so if I wanted to draw little slur markings or something to show where those half steps are, it would be right here and right there. Notice in the C major scale, it's the same thing between notes 3 and 4, between notes 7 and 8. That's always where the half steps occur. So again, if you want to remember whole, half, whole, half, awesome. If you would rather just remember that you have whole steps everywhere except 3 to 4 and 7 to 8, that works too. They'll both work 100% of the time, as long as you use them consistently, of course. Okay, so for the bottom here, simply examine these scales and determine whether or not this is a major scale. Does it follow this pattern of whole and half steps? Or are your half steps only between notes 3 and 4 and 7 and 8? Investigate these scales, decide on your answer, we'll take it up. And then when you're done pause the video right now, and when you're done, you can carry on, we'll carry on together onto page 18. Off you go. Okay, so we're moving on to the C major scale. We talked a little bit about the C major scale on the last page. So you already know that the C major scale doesn't need any black keys. All right, and this is just a little bit of a tip. How to write scales correctly. Spread the notes out over the space. Start with the first and last notes so you don't end up with all the notes bunched up. If you are given all this space to write a scale, certainly on a test, for example, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, right? We don't want to necessarily squish all our notes into the first half of the space. Spread your notes out, okay? This is a much more uniform looking scale, right? It doesn't have to be perfectly spaced out, but use the space that you're given, certainly. Right? You have to have a clef. You always have to have a clef whenever you're dealing with pitch. Right? So whether they ask you for the treble clef or for the bass clef shouldn't make a difference because you know how to use both. But always remember that anytime you're writing pitches on a staff, you must have a clef. Right? And then finish with a double bar line. It's just good grammar, good musical etiquette to draw those, to make sure you have those elements in place. All right, now, the last little bit of this page, it really is just a few little practice things. The instruction says, mark the half steps in this scale of C major with a bracket like this. You know from the last page where these half steps should be. So mark the half steps with a bracket to connect the two notes between which there is a half step. Next, it says, write the scale of C major in the treble clef. So, it's already written for you. Essentially, just copy what you have up top. Okay, practice writing the C major scale. Again, spreading the notes out across the staff. And then write the C major scale in the bass clef. So you'll draw a bass clef here, start on the proper note C in the bass clef, and away you go. All right, easy 2 little pages to get through. The first page, page 17, is where you actually learn the stuff. Page 18, this is just practice, knowing where your whole and half steps are. And of course, proper musical grammar when you're writing the stuff. All right, have fun, take it up, and we'll see you in the next lesson.